In this explainer, we're going to step right into an immersive historical reconstruction of the 19th century Christmas. We're going to completely strip away the cozy, modern sentimentality you might be used to and examine how everyday people, from monarchs in their palaces down to paupers in the workhouse, actually experience this holiday. We're looking way beyond the festive decorations here to uncover the massive societal systems, the constraints of industry, and the really harsh realities of survival that truly shaped everyday existence during this season.
Take a listen to this verse by George R. Sims. "Bide the Christmas here, John, we've never had one apart. I think I can bear the hunger, the other would break my heart." That chilling quote plunges us straight into the freezing realities of the Victorian era. It completely shatters our modern myths of an exclusively merry, abundant Christmas and hits the nail on the head regarding the stark class divides of the past. For so many everyday people, just surviving the winter and staying close to loved ones, rather than celebrating, was the absolute primary concern of December 25th.
Section 1. Inventing the Modern Holiday. You know, what we think of today as this ancient, timeless celebration was actually a highly deliberate 19th century invention. It was literally engineered to reconcile the deep anxieties of the Industrial Revolution with brand new ideals of domesticity and family life.
To put this rapid change into perspective, before the Victorian era, Christmas wasn't even a guaranteed day off for the working class. The structural shift actually kicked off in 1833, when the Factory Act officially granted December 25th and 26th as days of rest. That structural change gave people the actual time to celebrate. Fast forward a decade to 1843, and Charles Dickens publishes A Christmas Carol, which created this incredibly powerful moral landscape for the holiday, basically a call for charity to balance out all the capitalistic consumption. By 1847, Tom Smith invents the Christmas cracker, and the very next year, the Illustrated London News publishes a highly influential image of the royal family's Christmas tree. It's fascinating because this rapid sequence of events, all within about 15 years, forged a unified cultural consensus around the holiday.
So Queen Victoria and Prince Albert really served as the royal catalyst for this new era. As the ultimate arbiters of middle-class taste, Albert brought over his Germanic traditions, specifically the fir tree adorned with lit candles, sweets, and ribbons. When that 1848 illustration hit the printing presses, it spread like wildfire. It broadcast this domestic ritual to the masses and sparked a nationwide obsession. Bringing an evergreen tree inside the parlor wasn't just some quirky royal habit anymore. It became the very center of the middle-class holiday, reinforcing family cohesiveness in a world that was rapidly and sometimes terrifyingly changing.
Section 2. Feasts and parlor amusements. With a bit more disposable income and access to factory-made goods, the newly minted middle-class parlor became this theater of warmth, excess, and occasionally surprisingly dangerous play. For instance, consider the perilous parlor game of Snapdragon. Participants would literally attempt to pluck raisins out of a shallow bowl of burning, alcohol-doused fruit. Just imagine the sensory experience for a moment. The gas lamps are extinguished, you feel the blistering heat of the blue flames, smell the sharp, sweet scent of burning brandy, and see these demonic reflections dancing across the faces of the players. It was a thrilling, even physically painful game that offered a rare, chaotic reprieve from the incredibly strict, modest social rules of Victorian society.
And while they were dodging parlor flames, they were also playing with explosives. The Christmas cracker was a brilliant innovation of industrial mass production. First, a London confectioner named Tom Smith took inspiration from French bonbons wrapped in twisted paper. He experimented by replacing the sweets inside with mass-produced toys and trinkets. Next, he added a silver fulminate friction mechanism. Boom! The explosive bangs of expectation, as it was called, was born. This perfectly capitalized on industrial capabilities, bringing affordable, interactive joy right into the middle-class home.
In a world entirely without electronic media, Christmas required tactile interaction. Miniature toy theaters, printed by publishers like West and Pollock, allowed families to literally build elaborate paper stages. This brought the massive spectacle, color, and drama of London pantomimes directly into the safety of their homes. But what is truly fascinating here is how these paper kits functioned as instruments of imperial connection. Families would mail them as far away as Australia, allowing colonists to participate in the shared cultural aesthetic of the cozy British winter hearth, thousands of miles away from London.
Section 3. Christmas in the workhouse. Now, we absolutely must shatter this cozy parlor illusion and cross the tracks into the brutal, institutionalized reality of the 19th century poor, where the state heavily mediated the holiday experience. There was a stark, legally mandated contrast in how different classes survived the day.
while the middle class was utilizing things like goose clubs to buy roasted meats on installment plans, serving them up alongside mock turtle soup and flaming plum puddings. The state legislated a completely different reality for the destitute under the 1834 Poor Law Amendment Act. A flavorless gruel diet was mandated by law. In fact, roast beef and plum pudding were strictly prohibited on Christmas in workhouses, deliberately designed to deter poverty. Sensory deprivation was, quite literally, being used as a weapon of social control.
To really ground this in historical reality, let's look at a primary account from Surgeon John Houghton in 1844 regarding a woman named Mary Dussy in the Dudley Union. He recorded, "On Christmas Day, her husband said they should have had nothing to eat had not the neighbors given them some potatoes and a little bit of beef." The doctor described her lying on a bed of rags in a hopeless state of starvation. This wasn't some Dickensian fiction we read about. This was the systemic, physical reality of survival for the lower classes during the holidays.
Well, eventually, public outrage over this cruelty forced a shift in policy. By the late 1840s, workhouses began allowing private donations of roast beef, but this birthed a highly paternalistic feast. The meals were served by local dignitaries and wealthy guardians standing over the poor. It reveals a severe cognitive dissonance in the Victorian era. Festive meals were eventually provided, sure, but only under a lurid system of highly structured, patronizing charity, a system that ultimately reinforced the very social hierarchy keeping these people impoverished in the first place.
Section 4. Ancient Rites and Oddities. Panning out from the urban centers to the rural countryside, we find ancient regional traditions fiercely resisting the homogenization of this new, domestic middle-class holiday.
The Victorian world outside the parlor was loud, chaotic, and wondrously strange. On St. Thomas's Day, December 21st, impoverished older women engaged in mumping, going door to door collecting alms in a structured, desperate tactic just to survive the winter freeze. Meanwhile, in a completely different sphere, anarchic schoolboys returning home for the holidays fired dried peas from brass pea shooters at unsuspecting pedestrians from their carriages, and back in the city, urbanites flocked to the Smithfield Cattle Show, marveling at gargantuan, selectively bred livestock, celebrating agricultural abundance in a rapidly industrializing nation.
Out on the Celtic fringes, communities maintained deeply pre-industrial rituals that outright rejected English homogenization. In Wales, you had the Mari Lwyd, literally a decorated horse's skull on a pole, paraded around for competitive rhyming battles called punqua. They also gathered for Plygain, a 3 a.m. a cappella caroling service. In Ireland, Wren Day involved hunting a wren, mounting it to a pole, and parading it door to door. And in Scotland, they heavily leaned into Hogmanay, New Year's Eve, with traditions like first footing and burning rowan twigs, largely rejecting the English Christmas entirely. These were profound, living rituals of community, identity, and resistance.
So we have to ask ourselves, are our most cherished holiday traditions merely the echoes of 19th century social engineering? From the toys we buy to the evergreens we decorate, so much of what we consider timeless was actually shaped by the hard forces of industry, the looming threat of the workhouse, and a desperate human need for comfort in a rapidly changing world. Thank you for joining me for this explainer. As we close, I leave you to reconsider those invisible historical forces that continue to shape our everyday existence, even today.